Anybody not ready? Alright. Contention 1 is my story. When I joined debate, I was told I would become a better speaker. I would use debate to improve my English skills, to communicate with others, and East not engage with them. It's East all over. They're learning to assimilate into society built to reject me. But I graduated East and got better at this activity. As I gained success, I engaged debate and as I compared to win it all and to beat my opponents. You do not know who the Cougar Brothers are. You only know Centennial KK, a team people point to and say, oh, look at those Koreans learning how to debate so well and working hard to win tournaments. Instead, my hard work, my cutting hard through sleeping nights and assimilating to a traditional foreign debate has turned me into a mild minority. But now it's my senior year, and I have a resolution that teaches us how to engage with other people. It looks like my career has come full circle. I learned how to engage other people, and now it's time to give it back. This year I choose to engage through who I am, through my experiences with a diverse team, their approach, and my exposure to non-traditional arguments. Now contention 2 is a resolution. Korean immigrants has been kept a secret in Mexican history. Forced labor, hacienda caused the immigrants to suffer as foreigners in a foreign country. That's civilian in 2007. It was part of Mexican history which has been kept a secret. Hundreds of Koreans as forced labor and haciendas. They could never imagine the sacrifices that we folks made. Lydia and Banana's grandparents selling in Mexico. It was difficult. There was hard labor. Their hands would be yeet touched by grandparents living and suffering in a foreign country. Those who refuse to work were beaten. What's your last name? They would say there is no such last name, so we all change our name. Now these slaves represent the myth of the mild minority through the Enoch Dean. Korean immigrants were recognized as the best workers, but excluded and treated like brutes due to their identity. She in 2005, when they have left their homeland for a strange country, among those 1,030 Koreans, now when we see the beautiful mountains and rivers of their home country again, the first Korean immigrants, Latin American nation, were nicknamed Anakin, a cactus. A Japanese slave trade disguised came to take Koreans to work on sugar cane plantation. They're sold as slaves to the cactus plantation owners and factories. Their lives worse than Bruce, but their diligence earned them a reputation as the best workers. Someone said they were given the nickname Now the story is the same throughout the entirety of history. The narration of America is different from Asians. They faced a unique form of discrimination, one that excluded and degraded them, but was kept silent through the myth of the mild minority. China 93, exclusion from legal political participation. Immigrants probably not prison. Justice prison we were victimized. Opponents were not Chinese immigrants. The Chinese immigrants is substance until they claim to entry verified by intensive cross-examination. Feeling parlance is public relations, a culmination of discriminating practice. Stories from a period resonate with domination and despair. The experience of the early Chinese immigrants brought the conscience for all Asian immigrants because other Asian immigrants encountered similar violence. Koreans thought that the immigrants before them pro-white anti-American reaction by taking them away. They tried to overcome discrimination by distancing themselves from the Chinese and Japanese by becoming more westernized. Despite these efforts, the immigrants to westernize and be accepted. They're treated by white Americans as merely different strains of the same yellow peril. The 1970 federal naturalization statute permitting only free white persons to become national. Following the 14th Amendment, Asians became the only group ineligible for citizenship. Besides the 9 Asian right classifying aliens into 2 groups, those eligible and those ineligible citizens, to provide the basis for state discrimination. Such classification from the states to pass statutes that are race neutral, unfacing, and thus immune to equal protection challenges. Many states took advantage. Asians were placed in segregated schools. Asian Americans denied quintessential rights such as the right to own property, the right to choose one possession. Few people know that Asian Americans challenge the legality of segregated schools. To counter that, Asian Americans have not faced discrimination. To challenge the myth that Asian Americans are a passive minority. Asian Americans contribute to the civil rights movement have been largely ignored. Federal measures ultimately had a profound impact on the psyche and development of the Chinese American community. The hundreds of would-be immigrants were detained for months. The Angel Island facility was intended to be escaped, but detainees were treated like animals and commodities, forced to live in squalid, cramped quarters. I am bound and still present Asians stereotypes as alien. Those who do not belong here and those presence is not desired. We must recognize that the early Asian immigrants were bringing out the ways of voice, and we can do no less. But the plague continues today. The experiences of the China robber have demonstrated oppression against Asians. The only way to solve this is to speak out against the silent. Chang Kuship-sam, I'm a second generation Korean American without any achievements in life. I was just a simple worker, a farm worker. I've been told that engaging in non-traditional legal scholarship may hurt my job prospects. I think about American border guards stopped me when I tried to return. My valid license was not good enough to let me return to my country. He asked where my passport was. I imagined the phone call I would have to make, the embarrassed I would feel until when I told my law firm I would not be at work until I could prove that I belong. I have been an alien. Things have happened since, like the time I was refused service at a service station, or the time I was stopped in New Jersey for suspicion of possessing a stolen vehicle. 4 big policemen against 1 Asian man. Perhaps they were afraid I might know martial arts. They cannot even say 1 word. Sorry. No matter how hard I cry, it does not complain. No matter how hard I try, I cannot be as good as everyone else. I will never be white. I am tired of silence, and so I raise my voice. But the story is the same throughout society. The presence of minorities policed by hostility and discrimination. They are locked between inclusion and aspiration, while understating with a nation that promises to realize treaty. Preference 2007. Minority people struggle to process getting accepted in the majority community characterized given cultural assumptions. Stories of hostility over discrimination. Violence, poverty, to dislocate immigrants. To find someone in social content that includes some same different population. Separately, child part of the race, religion, and language. Locked into someone inclusive and ostrated between the dominant and the subordinate. Not to mention the people just beneath them. Seems particularly unjust a nation like the United States, whose diversity is so great and whose ideas promise the possibility to realize dreams for all. Now, this manifestation of the mild minority or train Asian Americans solely as hardworking others without exposure of the place make people resent and become unsympathetic to Asian Americans. This has 3 implications. 1 is that the oppression of Asian Americans continues. 2 that the Asian parties used to justify the oppression of other minorities and theories that Asians are viewed as privileged by other minorities when the reality is that is not the case. Chan, Kujibsan, the history of discrimination or excluded by the portrayal of Asians as a minority. Asian Americans portray hardworking intelligence as well. The belief in the minority justify ignoring of unique discrimination rates of Asian Americans. The portrayal of parents in general public to ignore their needs. You find important racial minority pulling itself for hardship to become a lot of self-represent. This small minority theme has become a largely unquestioned assumption by current social reality. One can see the label for a tool of oppression which denies the existence of present-day discrimination against Asian Americans and legitimizes the oppression of other racial minorities. The myth that gained a substantial following both inside and outside the Asian American community. The minority to create an audience unsympathetic to the problems of Asian Americans. They can even spark resentment. Professor Nana tells about the reaction of our literature class to an outspoken Asian American writer. One student blurted that she was offended by his militant tone. Sure, some of these other ranks have been just not more militant. Had they been offended but failed to express their feelings? To my surprise, it said they were not offended by any of the Black American, Chicano, or Native American writers. They understood the anger expressed by Black and Chicanos. They emphasized with the Native American, but the Asian Americans, it made me angry because I did not even know that the Asian Americans felt oppressed. My mind misruns oppression of the Asian Americans invisible. To be honest, to be without social service. The thing Asian Americans succeeded. Officials denied funding for social service programs. College administration excluded Asian American students from opportunity programs. The income disparity from Asian American groups are glaring. Jamaican families have more workers per household. Wage disparity become apparent when geographic location considered. The wit works a dual harm by hurting other racial minorities and poor whites who are blamed for not being successful. African Americans, Latinos, and poor whites are told, look at those Asians. Anyone can make it in the country. This blame is justified by the mediocrity thesis proved by Asian Americans. We are complicit to the oppression of other racial minorities. This blame creates resentment against Asian Americans, African Americans, Latinos, and poor whites. The model minority serves as a convenient scapegoat as Korean Americans discovered during the riots. Many Korean Americans now view themselves as human shields caught between the white majority and the anger of Black majority. The model minority plays a key role in establishing a racial hierarchy which not suppression of Asian Americans. Thus, Cave and I advocate through a process of conscientization and interrogation of the myth of the minority present in the history of the United States federal government economic engagement towards Mexico. Contention 3 is conscientization. We often competitively participate in debate without ever considering the possibility of how debate can change the world, how the critical thinking and the research skills we develop can provide meaning and advance methodologies to liberate oppressed groups within our social occasion. Our speech act focuses on the epistemological goal, the current willing activity, and the development of critical conscience. Debate can become more than a game, but a process will lead to conscientization. Situation 12 the idea of Asian American reform, widely varying class, geographically, politically acting back, to find their way to act in the speech of real, possibly young people feeling critically constantly out there, acting involvingly, essentially in order to give them the political potential, cheerfully writing hopes for student actors are drowned in the sea of apathy. These Asian Americans gone against the grain, being politically active. They realize the political conversion, whether tendencies or nihilists countered by the chance for people to lead there is hope for the future to struggle. Common part of the fact that contribute to development Asian American critical conscience. They have U.S. economic engagement was the way we choose to discuss economic engagement policy to neglect the presence of the Asian identity. Our critical examination of digital policy question raises our conscience of how we Asians exist and see the world and creates real change. Also, June 2007, the conscientization being able to enable meaningful education to recognize on the same impact of social conditions, force oppression, having lives allowed this process of conscientization goes in constant clarification what ranks hidden within while we move around the approach to recognition of the world, not just giving the world, but the world dynamically in the making. Such recognition this process will work against oppression. Begin their active efforts to transform the world. Naming the world was an important step towards actively changing it. Now, our performance is key. The base has critical elements that contribute to conscientization that must be embraced for effective change. OCG 12-7. Critical elements contribute to conscientization. Important obtaining information conceptually, calming us, lives, shared life, social reporting. Important moment to educate key social support related data. School list content about racial and Asian American experience. Inspiring experience other Americans of struggle, overcome conditions, commit Asian American issues, deepen with these transfer knowledge, understanding into action, research, extend knowledge to limit efforts to make change. Finally, conscientization occurs when these three elements form a combination, not purely intellectual experience, abstract social elements, instead multifaceted interrelations to be reinforced, which other for action seeking to raise critical consciousness of Asian Americans. So that's just something contemplated for cognitive foundation that's a for people see themselves in relation to the world.
Alright, so why does the 1AC start off with this sort of discussion of all these negative aspects impacting to you as Asian in the debate space?
Because that is our story, and that is us bringing out the invisibility of the myth of the minority.
Right, why do
the narrative is about our story of our journey through debate.
Right, but it speaks about like how it's impacted you when you've been marginalized and oppressed in these spaces.
No, we have not said that. We said that we had a topic this year where we learn how to economically engage other people.
I'm speaking specifically about the narrative that you read about you. They don't see you as cool. They just see you as, you know, like Centennial.
Yes, as a model minority. Right. We're saying that myth needs to be challenged, which is why we prefer.
Right. So the model minority myth in itself is inherently bad.
Yes.
Cool. Well, how do you define the model minority myth?
The model minority myth, as defined by us and all our evidence, says that Asians are right now portrayed as hardworking others. Like the whites and other immigrants point to the Asian immigrant or the Asian minority and say, look at them, they're hardworking, so they must be better than all of you, and your own suffering must be justified by your own values. When that is actually not the case, that's just a myth that Asians believed and other people believe.
So the real argument is that you're not hard workers? Like what's the opposite?
The argument is that this is a myth that needs to be challenged. There are groups of Asians
that challenge in what sense? Like what connotation?
There's groups of Asians such as Southeast Asians who have been denied welfare, educational opportunities because they're all lumped in the category of Asian together. There are some that fit this model minority myth and believe in it, and we're saying that myth needs to be torn down to solve for the unique discrimination faced by Asian Americans.
Alright, you last piece of evidence spoke about, well, our last argument was about how your performance is uniquely key. So, like, what part of your performance was the key part? Was it, like, the reading of the evidence? Was it the narrative? Like, which part?
It was the entirety of the 1AC and our discussion that we bring for this round.
So, like, is the discursive aspect in itself going to break down into sort of,
yes, just the fact that right now Asian Americans believe in the model minor myth, and Gabriel and I have decided to challenge it, is solvency in itself. Now, the OCG evidence describes that not only we need these types of research or personal aspects, but we need to speak out of it in academic spaces such as debate, which is what we're doing, which is a reason why the ballot signifies an acceptance of our performance and breaking down of the model.
Alright, so why do you need that sort of acceptance from the judges in this space to prove that you've spoken out?
That is breaking down the myth of the model minority.
Breaking down the myth of the minority includes like having people accept you, like you need their acceptance for that myth to be represented.
No, they didn't accept that the model minority myth is
false. No, I'm saying
you need the ballot.
You need the ballot as a representation of that acceptance.
We don't need the acceptance. They accept that the myth of the model minority.
Right, I don't understand why you need that to be able to access solvency for 1AC though.
That is a reason why our performance is good. Because performance is better than yours.
Alright, so you were talking about a process of
I have like 20 seconds. I'm sorry to cut you off. I just have a couple more questions. Alright, why do you speak specifically about Mexico?
Because it's a relation to the topic.
Alright, so you only isolate that country just because there's relationality to the topic?
No, Korean immigrants were used as slaves on Mexican haciendas.
Alright.
It's a problem that needs to be brought up.
Cool, and how do you define conscientization?
Conscientization is a process of naming the world and learning about it, specific to Asian Americans.
Naming the world?
And learning about it.
Okay.
Specific to Asian Americans.
Alright. Flash.
Do you need a flash?
Pull it out.
Yes.
No, we have a flash.
I got you.
Okay. Love, negative. Love, negative. Well, love, NEG. It's not. It's just one off.
Oh, sorry.
Just let us know when you have it.
Would you like the sticker? Alright, we ready?
Okay.
Anybody not ready?
Go.
If we're going to take it back, let's take it all the way back. We need to rewind to the beginning of the clip. The beginning clip of history didn't start with slavery. It didn't start with the raping, the pillaging, and the exploitation of black and brown bodies. Let's start at the beginning. Let's start at the opening credits. When the movie starts, it starts with the acknowledgement of production, not just the production. It starts with how this movie came to be, not just what it is. It starts with what we have given thanks to. And it starts with ourselves. Next. I was born in the Congo. I walked the Fertile Crescent and built the Sphinx. I designed a pyramid so tough that a star that only glows every 100 years falls. In the center, given divine perfect light. I am bad. I sat on the throne drinking nectar with Allah. I got hot and sent the ice age to Europe to cool my thirst. My oldest daughter is Nefertiti. The tears of my birth pains created the Niles. I am a beautiful woman. I gazed on the forest and burned out the Sahara Desert with a pack of goat's meat and change of clothes. I crossed it in 2 hours. I'm a gazelle so swift that you can't catch me. For a birthday present when he was 3, I gave my son Hannibal an elephant. He gave me Rome for Mother's Day. My strength flows ever on. My son Noah built Newark. And I stood proudly at the hem as we sailed on a soft summer day. I turned myself into myself and I was Jesus. Men intoned my loving name. All praises, all praises. I am the one who would save. I sold diamonds in my backyard. My bow is delivered uranium. The filing of my fingernails are semi-precious jewels. On a trip north, I caught a cold and blue. My news giving oil to the Arab world. I am so hip, even my errors are correct. I sailed west to reach east and had to round off the earth as as I went. The hair from my head thin and gold was laid across 3 continents. I am so perfect, so divine, so ethereal, so surreal. I cannot be comprehended except by my permission. I mean, I can fly like a bird in the sky. Next, we are more than just slaves. We are before. We are before. We are before the document that is used to create a starting point for black culture. We will no longer press skip and ignore the start of the tape. The comprehension and recognition of all black history is the only way that we can create true counter-dominant knowledge. Ego Tripping by Giovanni suggested the inability to acknowledge the starting point or the decision to ignore the starting point destroys education. She acknowledged the multiplicity of positive production of black culture, the history that's preceded what is taught in schools, and break on the space for production she didn't list. It is inherently necessary to destroy the starting point for which we engage in these debates. To understand African American culture, you must acknowledge that everything about African American culture has to do with comprehension of the past. So 3, we can acknowledge the legacy slavery while simultaneously put it in the context of overall historical legacy, one that begins not with slavery but with the African explorers who came before Columbus. We need to create a real relationship to the huge continent that is Africa, based on concrete study and not just utopian fantasies. We need literacy, a mass-based movement for literacy linked to education for critical consciousness. Most important, we need to start where we are, in the places where we live. Get over thinking that expressing feelings make you weak. Start expressing yourself. Start challenging these folks around you who put you down. Even express what you feel. Next, sure, racism is alive and kicking and determines a lot of black lives, but we can't let it determine black hearts, black minds, and black spirit. The traditional focus of race is the same demoralizing and dehumanizing analysis that keeps people of color locked in the brokenness of dilapidation, and the debaters call the status quo. Tyler and I call for a holistic understanding of ourselves. 603. We know that while race and racism overdetermines many aspects of our lives, we are still free to be self-determining. Many young black folks who are full of self-doubt and lacking in self-esteem fixate on race in a way that is demoralizing and dehumanizing. Looking at ourselves holistically, seeing our emotional well-being as rooted both in the politics of race and racism as well as our capacity to be self-defining, we can create self-esteem that is needed to care for our souls. If we begin with self-esteem, our success is assured. Next, the 1AC only allows our understanding to go as far as slavery, limiting the possibilities for black love. How can we love ourselves if we only understand our position in negative connotations? If we have no positive agency to refer to, this is the time method that Willie Lynch was used to produce slaves in America by taking your mind and placing it in a subservient world. Hook 3. The fact that racism continues to impact negatively on our lives as African Americans has led many of us to feel that we can never be free of suffering, that as a slave mentally, because it denies that both our history and our own agency. Next, Tyler and I advocate for a return to self-love in order to build self-esteem and overcome the negativity placed on blackness. Hook 3. If we begin to practice love, defined here as a combination of care, commitment, knowledge, responsibility, respect, and trust, we have all the tools we need to build a healthy self-esteem. Next, there is a need for black folk to honor themselves, to acknowledge their true history, to have a spiritual revolution. War crimes, violence, emotional, and psychological sufferings will never be resolved until we resolve this. Next, Hook 3. Our problems both we experience externally, such as war crimes and violence, and those we experience internally, our emotions and psychological sufferings cannot be solved until we address the underlying neglect. Our revolution is called for certainly, but not a political, an economic, or even a technical revolution. What I propose is a spiritual revolution. Like our nation as a whole, black folks are in need of a spiritual revolution that will enable us to collectively reclaim our being in the world, that allows us to honor ourselves, to value our lives rightly. Choosing a spiritual revolution, back folks will reclaim the power of the soul. Next, let the ballot affirm positive thinking that is necessary to build self-esteem and reach true freedom. Hook 3. Positive thinking helped free and save black folks. All other struggles for civil rights, let us participate in the many freedoms we have today. We are fueled by positive thinking. Since when we talk back so well, we need to talk back to negativity. Affirmations are great, building self-esteem. Giving your children affirmations the same in the morning and night. Traditionally, black people made affirmations a central feature of prayer. I begin my day with the affirmation that I am breaking away with old patterns and moving forward with my life. Next, the positive image of the counter-dominant traditional white gaze of black society. Solvency, Hook 3. Parents of black children who are aware that they live in racist society and the negative stereotypes of their children, many act in critical conscious way by providing their children with positive image that counter with representations imposed by dominant white culture. Culture of whiteness, sorry.
Okay. Your advocacy calls for self-love, building esteem, and confidence. The way Osajima defines conscientization is conscientization, being able to name the world a meaningful recognition. Such recognition inspires people to work against oppression, being their active efforts to transform the world. Why isn't our advocacy an example of this self-love?
Because it starts off with the whole foundation of self-esteem. Once we have that type of self-esteem, then we can go towards that self-love.
Okay, how is the 1AC not an example of self-esteem?
Your whole argument is that you're trying to reject this sort of optimistic, like hardworking lenses that traditional gays have in you, and rather acknowledge the sort of efficiency of that culture. You know, speaking about the enslavement and people who don't have access to formal education, you're saying that we should reject those positive images and rather focus on.
So you're saying that these positive images of hardworking others are good.
We're saying that we need to affirm, we need to like self-import positive images of ourselves. Your argument was that you need to go back to like the discussions of slavery, you know, think about people who don't have access.
That makes sense, except it makes sense because all your concerns in the context of Black Americans. Where
right, but there's an example of how to get liberation for
where is there an argument
she's
about
saying it's problematic to the whole world. It's like she's saying that it's an example historically for black people, but like it impacts the whole world. In a
which
sense.
card says that about Asians?
It doesn't say Asians, but it says for the whole world. Like people need to understand that self-esteem.
All right, Asians are in the process of self-love. They self-love themselves, that they are close to the whites, that they are a model minority. They accept that model minority in the status quo. Why is the Asians of the 1AC not an impact?
Okay, but the thing is, you're trying to get this form of acceptance. You can't have this form of acceptance without having your type of
How is our advocacy a form of acceptance?
Just say.
No, like how is our advocacy of gay and non-conforming within this round? How is that a form of acceptance?
When you call for the balance, so that balance that they accept your argument, right? You're trying to change sort of.
Except you also call for the ballot. How do you not link to that?
Right, your argument, like you specifically said in cross, that's a call for acceptance. That's a completely different argument from what we're making. Our argument is not a call for acceptance.
Okay, so you say calling for the ballot is acceptance. Why
No,
don't
that.
you link to
Oh my
that
gosh.
why don't you link to that if you call for a negative
That's
ballot?
not what I said though.
Okay, so I'm making the argument now. Why isn't your call for a negative ballot a call for acceptance?
You're not calling for the ballot.
But it's not a call.
It's not in a form of acceptance in the way that the NEC is searching for the ballot.
What's the difference?
Then how does negative win?
Because
in process, you said that the affirmation of the ballot is an acceptance of your argument.
right, ours is about affirmation of like self-reflection as a necessary tool to build self-esteem and access to sort of transforming love.
Okay. Okay. You say that there's traditional views of racism are bad. How are we a traditional view of racism?
The 1MC never specifically say it was a specific view of negative racism. So.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Are you making a folder? I'll save it to the Dropbox so I can get it out.
No, don't have it.
That's true. I think Tyler.
The big case in
Oh.
the UK.
I'll slide it.
Yep.
Yeah, I need our flashlight too. What's it coming with? You just have
Yeah. Keep getting downshifting
Start
on
with
the screen and then turn
So
it
we're
to
not
the
ready.
screen. Sorry, what did you say, case in the UK?
Yes. It is a part order Mexico's history, which had been kept a secret. Korean immigrants were shipped to plantation in order to find out any kind they led life worse than the proof, but their diligence earned their reputation. And the mass workers inherit that people except that blacks were historically discriminated. However, yellow areas kept invisible. And some of the Asian Americans had been kept out of the legal participation. Starting with Chinese immigrants, hundreds were detained for months where they were treated like animals or commodities. They were verified by intensive cross-examination to make sure they belonged wave after wave. Immigrants and tried to be more westernized than the last in order to be accepted. However, they will not be viewed as the same yellow peril. This is just inherently that the Asian body cannot go through a process of self-reflection, only go through a process of conscientization, able to solve following the 14th Amendment. Asian became the only population unable to become natural. They were denied the right to property, profession, and education. We must challenge the notion that Asians are a passive minority that's challenged. Now, stories of hostility over discrimination and violence obviously the history of immigrants. Immigrants are disenfranchised by race, religion, and language. They are stuck under the dominated all-star. That's the pamphlet card. That Asian Americans are portrayed as hardworking, intelligent, minority. Their portrayal permits the general public to know the plight of the yellow body. This is the only question on subject that current social reality. One, the Asians have been kept out of the social service program, excluded from education operating program, because they are so personally not needed. Two other minorities are blamed for not being successful, like the Asian Americans, the African Americans, the Latinos, the poor whites are told, look at those Asian Americans. Anyone can make it into this country. Now, 3 Koreans are used as a hue, make sure to protect the whites and receive all the resentment from the African Americans. We become scapegoats, which emphasize the racial hierarchy that already exists. Now, they have conceived that we are able to solve the myth of the minority, which is the first step in for Asian Americans to accept the identity and become self-reflexive, which the critique calls for. One, the Asian community largely accepts the myth in the status quo, and only a process of conscientization and not accepting that myth is what we go through. To the pressure, Asian Americans are invisible to the public. That's all the nonsense. Well, now they have drove up the ocean, Gene McCarthy call for conscientization is a call for naming and go through a self-reflective thought and keep on knowing who we are in relation to the world. The ocean and the conscious process of conscientization is the self-reflective process that the critique calls for, except for the critique calls for a self-reflective process of the negative. We go through a process of the Asian American immigrant, which they do not capture through the critique. Go on to create. Now, first it's going to be the unique disclaimer. Nativist racism. There is a conceptual differential racism that is founded. Nativist racism has outcasted Asian Americans from the nation, relying on several ideologies and stereotypes that have been led to exclusion over time. The largest jail peril ideology captured Asian American patriotism and especially bridging for nativist racism. This came in 2008. Nativist racism is method for which Asian Americans have been outcast from those society and several ideologies, society, economic, competitor, organized, criminal, illegal, aliens, unlawful, immigrants, and military, and yellow peril resentment, alleged economic cooperation with the yellow body led to the exclusion and our largest yellow peril ideology also captured American patriotism that have been especially bridging for nativist racism. Now, nativist racism has outcast Asian Americans. The Asian relying on several ideologies and stereotypes that led to exclusion over the time, which means that we cannot go through a process of self-reflection until this is taken care of. The alarmist yellow idea, peril ideology, conscientization, American patriotism that is especially egregious. It's in 2008, Native is which Native have American now the negative operates which is the framework of anti-acceptance with the civil society. This comes from racial scapegoat that undermines anti-racist coalition, the counter-advocacy, the affirmative because it takes a prior interrogation of racism against Asian Americans that problem the black-white binary. This Hutchinson in 2004 exclusive diplomatic black-white binary, very narrowly racial focus in order to construct adequate critique most anxiety and multi-dimensional harms that racial injustice causes, including harms that most likely support come from the principle of color. We have the deep division that results from binary racial policy, standard deformation, anti-racism, led to multicultural, led to demonstrate to protect racial inequality, binary, racial discrimination and discrimination experienced by Latin America, Asian American, white arguments that black should emulate mono-minority, unusually Asian American binary, racial discrimination was to discredit President Clinton by offering Asian Americans are proved. Now, the first there's got to be no link to the affirmative where there all their cards are talking about black culture and how the black is not just about suffering and just about slavery, but also about the culture. The Asian American culture has been invisible in the status quo. It's a large, unquestioned according to our childhood. We have to assume that to learn what the Asian American narrative is. We are the only one who are inheriting the Asian American narrative and going through a process of conscientization through our identity. Now, this is where the permutation comes in. Michael and I can go through a process of conscientization to become self-reliant, to break down the myth of the mono-minority and challenge can happen for the return to self-esteem and learn how to learn about the black culture and the black history instead. Now, U.S. military occupation and borderland has consequences that makes the Asian and Korean immigrants forever foreigners who can never go through a process of self-reflection until this is made. So in 2008, the president of the U.S. military for concentration of racial hierarchy, even though sent them back to social racial inequality forced by U.S. military president, gender white supremacy and black inferiority have been strengthened together. The military, the racial conflict reinforced Hollywood made thinking movie white America and rich America having a beautiful double island. And one of those cartoons surgery designed to fix up from the deformity, the race influence combined with violence. The regular Korean woman solidified the inferior status of Koreans, the racial stereotype, Korean immigrant impact to American soil. Someone saying if you're to one thing, some of the social economic more powerful, it's like politically less powerful, Asian American along with the social performance initiative, need to make long-standing struggle with external power, like ready to defend their honor. U.S. imperial have resulted in injustice, social problem, have a serious consequence for everyone. That permutation, this is their own hurt, their own evidence. I began my day with the affirmation. I'm breaking with the old banner, and moving forward was the life. The affirmative example is an example of moving forward in life to learn about our subconscious and learn our position in the world. That's the old Jim called conscientization, and the process of which we are able to solve. And that proselytize the narrative from the 1AC. We have gone through a process of self-conscientization to learn our identity, who we are as debaters. And we first came here to learn better communication skills, to speak better English, to economically engage with other people. As we got better at this debate, we were competitors in debate to beat everyone, and to be in the switch to learn. Now we are going back and coming around full circle to acknowledge that we are our identity does not allow us to debate in the traditional form, that we can go through a process of conscientization to be able to solve for another acceptance argument. To now say we say that we have to break down the myth of the model minority, which is the accepted myth in these other status quo right now. We are the only people who has the uniqueness for their argument. Also, their call for the valid arguments are irrelevant because we are speaking from our identity, and they are also calling for the valid. They were not able to articulate why there's a difference between the affirmative and negative calling for the valid. Don't let the two negative logic expand upon these issues, because the two is the last part where I can do in-depth analysis and nuanced arguments. Also, it's a constant shallow debate where we never engage each other, never engage each other. And they call for the they say that the black. They say that slavery is not the beginning. Yes, it may not be the beginning for the black culture, but it's also, we can say that it's an inherent, intrinsic part of the Korean culture that we identify in Mexico. The first immigrants in Mexico were working on Hacienda Plaza. They do not have any specific evidence on the Asian American body, which we say is a critical process for our identity and go through a process of conscientization. They say that there's an inability to a starting point. That's why also Jimmy says we have to consistently clarify where we are in the world, and so that's destroys the start point, and that is why the permutation is able to function in debate. They say racism is real, but they affect blacks in a different way. No, we say that the myth of the minority is an impact to other critiques impact, because the myth of the minority masses self-profits and only just foster resentment between African Americans and Korean Americans, shown as in the LA riots and in the past. Now they say we have to have a holistic approach and understand who we are. We cannot understand who we are as Asian, because that is the inerrancy of the status quo. The current traditional white supremacist system, we cannot mean that. We can also they're probably articulate that Mexico using Korean immigrant as slavery is just another living for the Korean. No, it's not. It's an intrinsic part of our identity that we cannot separate. Also, we are breaking down the myth of the minority and taking down that narrative, which means there is absolutely no link to the critique. The permutation is able to function because also it's on different levels. They can go through a process of self-love and self-reflection, while we go through a process of conscientization and break down the myth of the minority. It's not mutually exclusive. There's no reason why the permutation cannot function in the world.
Can you explain the terms?
Can I explain the terms?
Yeah.
Well, the first one is that Michael and I can go through a process of conscientization from our Asian identity, and you and your partner can also advocate for a return to self-love and self-esteem.
The second one.
The second one is that these permutations function, the permutation is basically that we can go through a process that we first must break down the myth of the model minority and interrogate the Asian immigrant. Then we can go through, that's the only way that we can go through a process of self-love, while you guys can go through a process of self-esteem by yourselves.
Okay, cool. So how come the Asian can't go through self-reflection?
Well, we have several arguments. The first one is the Kim evidence that there's a new form of oppression that we call, that she calls nativist racism, which is the mechanism in which Asian Americans are outcasted from the general majority population, called as forever foreigners, where they are never accepted. This means that Korean and other Asian immigrants are always trying to become westernized, such as Chang, the narrative we read from Chang from the 1AC indicates that no matter how hard he scrubs, he's never going to become white, he's never going to become clean.
So you said the perm works on different levels, correct?
Yes.
So the first level will have to be the self-realization for the Asian body.
No, the perm functions on different level. Like it's like what do you say? Two lines in a geometric plane. One is going, they're parallel to each other in a, so they never like meet up. You guys can go through a process of self-esteem, while we can go through a process of conscientization.
Oh, okay. So Can you explain the nativist racism?
I just explained that as our first argument. And nativist racism is that Asian Americans are outcasted from the nation, relying on several ideologies and especially erroneous forms.
So my question is, just by talking about deconstructing the whole myth of the modern minority, is that the only way that we can actually solve for the Asian body?
No, this was in the entirety of the 1AC, that Asian Americans themselves accept the myth of the modern minority. They want to become whites. They want to become westernized in the status quo. We say that that is erroneous and that we are breaking from that norm and saying that we will not be model minorities and that we will no longer do. Also, we expose the oppression of Asian Americans, which have been largely invincible and unquestioned norms in status quo policy.
Okay, can you explain the accepting the ballot, the role of the ballot argument?
I did not make a role of the ballot. We say that our performance of the 1AC is a good idea, that we break down the myth of the minority and that stops oppression.
So this debate will come down to?
I mean, this debate will come down to probably the link, because the permutation is able to resolve for it and solve for it. We go through a process, like literally our own Osajima cards say, go through a critical consciousness, self-reflective thought. This is exactly what the Osajima cards are talking about. And to become critically conscious for Asian Americans, we do that through interrogating the myth of the minority and see how immigration has been historically part of the United States program.
Yeah.
Is it 8 or 10 minutes?
I think it's 10. I thought it's round.
I have no idea.
Let me check.
10 minutes. Doesn't matter.
Nobody's used any yet, so I'm not sure.
I think they might be doing it because we're running late.
We have a whole two less rounds of last year, so we should be on.
One less quarterfinals.
Yeah.
But we started around 8.
Somebody's signing this, right?
Yes.
I was listening to.
Okay.
You good?
Yeah, 6:40, right? I mean, no, I'm lying because it's 10, so at
8:40?
yeah, 8:40.
I go 10 minutes.
Oh, are we?
I don't know.
Okay. It's gonna be okay. Overview. Sorry.
Is this like
Oh,
a
wow.
giant overview, or is this like a normal?
Normal.
That's what they
Yeah, so it's 2 P7s. One of them I already did before, but I saved that as 20. Can I actually use this?
Yeah, go for it.
Whenever you're ready.
Ready? Sanctified and Mandalore are all about how the past influences present future. Do not understand the past, we can never understand our future without the rewinding and tape pressing the play button introduction of culture and history. The team blending disregards the pieces of history that have been lost and struggle, hold dear to culture that they survived. Stories called middle past and all things that happened before that, including positive agencies they assert in the middle, because that is what they talk about as the middle, not the beginning. Don't allow them nor the directional placement of history. It is they talk talk about the middle, not the beginning. When you press play starts from the birth of civilization by acknowledging the birth of culture, and starts with discussion of Africa and how it transcends back to reality and goes to K debate. First off, we're going to discuss length debate. They make a couple problematic scenarios. One, we isolate scenarios in one see. When we can start at the beginning of the narrative, when Ku talks about his sword play, directional placement in the context of the debate community, he speaks about a negative connotation. He speaks literally, speaks to people thought it would become better people. They only serve as a hard work and all these things. White supremacy and all these other issues, the one that's totally reject sort of positive agency to replace you. That's where we go back to conditioning slavery. Every time slavery, when people started positive agency, they were told not to have a white master thing like that, because that is what would keep them subservient in lots of situations. That's how they come to reject those positive agency. When they see that people consider them as hard working and we in these scenarios, they can understand the sort of racial placement they have now in terms of understanding slavery and the sort of reality face on a daily basis. They say that that's what we should be focusing on, but that's what we're saying is problematic. We're saying that we need to turn the table. We're not saying that the minority method is good in itself. We're saying we need the sort of self-reflection, a sort of positive agency of ourselves. That's why we start reading the poem. We read the poem, that's the Ego Trip by Nikki Giovanni, where it's basically talking about the positive agency, the advocates type, because we have to speak from our own position. We're born in the Congo, and how the black women themselves gave birth to all these realities, because we got the positive connotations of black culture, because asserting positive agency or positive representation, the piece of hook evidence that was evident at the bottom of the flow, at the bottom of the one, so it's simply about how we need to reject the sort of media, the connotations that media have, because those are the same things that reject. Instance, West Prince said, who aware to live in a racist society, but negative stereotypes of children may act in a critically conscious way by reviving children with positive counter representation imposed by dominant culture of whiteness, meaning that all these dominant images are imposed. We must have those constant rejections, but we're not speaking in terms of the minority with that. That there are historically a lot of great things that a lot of Asian countries and subcultures have done that have been positive. We can insert ourselves and use that as a starting point of epistemology of reference. Like there's whole starting point starts from the discussion of one, the minority, and two, the sort of slavery and other instances they've been faced in Mexico, and say conscientization is a way to resolve that. We're saying that that's problematic. We're saying we need a different starting point of epistemology. One that starts from a sort of positive agency, and the impact this is spiritual murder debate is going to transcend all realities. That's the other piece of hooks, and it speaks about spiritual murder is literally the internalization. These sort of follows the internalization, these negative stereotypes that are constantly placed as the internalization, the fact that we are productions of slaves or we are in slavery. The same way they talk about Mexico and the slave relationship are going on there, it starts to internalize things. So if we're speaking educational institute and activity, we're talking and relating to people, if they only understand the Asian bodies being solely slaves in Mexico and understand that, and that's what we're supposed to affirm as the actual reality. That's when we start to internalize that is what leads to spirit murder, because that transcends generation. That's the same thing that Willie Lynch was using when he spoke about like taking the mind, leaving the body. That was sort of destruction of the mind that we were actually getting at when he transported all these bodies to North America, to the United States. All instances they were saying that's what destroyed, and that's what allowed generation after generation of people to be enslaved, whether it was physically or psychologically. Their form of engagement was problematic. They speak about conscientization, but that's going to be the other piece of Hook's evidence. That same form of critical consciousness, but Hook said that you cannot reach this critical consciousness until you have the sort of self-esteem. Self-esteem is basically these sort of positive affirmations, like the fact that the affirmative is rejecting these sort of rejecting the notion of all positive stereotypes that are placed in them. It's not speaking specifically about the model minority, right? It's not saying that the model minority is good. It's not saying that we should solely view them as hard workers, individuals in the placement of the society. But it's saying that we should have a different understanding. They should be allowed to assert their own agency and assert their own definition of who they are in relationality to the world. That's not what they're getting at through the conscientization argument. They're just saying that we need to understand our placement. We're saying they're trying to let the world create themselves, saying you have to create your own position in the world. You have to affirm it. You have to specifically cite, I'm talking about in the 1AC, the positive connotation of your culture, where you have been situated. And then they go to the discussion of the role of ballot and how that ballot itself is no argument itself, but the argument they were making there is that in the crossings, the 1AC we were talking about what the ballot meant, the concept 1AC, and they said that the acceptance that the model minority doesn't exist and that they are they're able to transcend the model minority. We're saying that's problematic. That's what we're called for. Exactly the same thing that Hooks is critiquing, because he's talking about how we shouldn't be asking other people and relying on other things or other instances to determine where we are situated, relying that sort of acceptance rather than to a certain agency or itself. That's why our role about specifically about how the ballot's affirmation of using self-flesh and self-love. The alternative is specific to how we use ourselves as black individuals in space and affirm our love in ourselves through the starting point of self-esteem, asserting the positive agency. That's Nikki Giovanni, and they said that They said that it wasn't productive for them as a nation, but one, this piece of Hook's evidence, there's a collective obligation to confront this here, meaning that it transcends just reality of black culture, because this is the failure of a nation, meaning all bodies in this Hook's no one. I was including stress here that black children all ages respect the deep conviction, love, and knowledge that find levels of combination, care, knowledge, responsibility, respect, trust, commitment, and our nation becomes cynical about loving and becoming no surprise that raise loveliness that I talk about only most deep in the hearts of children. I'm being one of these groups that children, black girls, and boys were clubbed, disenfranchised, neglected, and rendered invisible society, and that I would hear sentiments directly acknowledged, accepting our present condition, the only form of extremism is just criticize before our children confront our collective failure as a nation to create this world we can all know love, meaning that's not just specifically into, we're not speaking specifically just in terms of blackness, but use that as an example about how we should be approaching liberation for press as a whole. Even when they speak about the sort of oppression they face, they speak about it in terms of racism, in terms of exclusion and sort of marginalization, which is the same thing that all oppressed bodies are facing. Like, they are not the only oppressed bodies that are facing that. This is a question of methodology and how we're actually starting these discussions, which is why a question like the permutation can never resolve discussion, because it doesn't resolve the discoursive aspects of the 1AC. And you can also extend the one other piece of Hook's 3 evidence I was right. We're speaking about how we need to honor ourselves in a true history, to have spiritual revolution. That piece of evidence in itself said that it's our nation as a whole that is the one that needs it. Like, literally said, well, I propose spiritual revolution for our nation as a whole. But it also speaks about how we all need a spiritual revolution, which is basically being able to turn like our ontology, like ourselves, our mental states and our beings, transcending sort of psychological realities to overcome these scenarios that have been placed in us. And the other argument they go for is black-white binary. They're going to create that, we create these sort of oppositional phases. But the argument that we make here is we do not put ourselves in the opposition of whiteness. We do not say that black is in the opposite of whiteness. They're the ones creating black-white binary. We're creating those sort of dichotomies. We're not excluding the sort of Asian identity. That's why we're engaged in them and speaking about methods of liberatory action. We haven't been fixated on that. I feel like the argument is more rooted toward sort of anti-blackness debate instead of the debate that we're actually getting at. And they said we call it racial scapegoating, and because we take a prior interrogation of racism, but it's not about taking a prior interrogation. It's not like saying that we should start interrogating the relationship of blackness for orientation, interrogate the relations of Asian Americans. It's saying that we need to speak about the sort of methodology. And methodology is like means to change from the starting point. We're saying that the starting point is what's problematic and sort of methodological approach. That's why methodology includes instances like poetry. We use poetry as a medium for how we express ourselves. Like, they speak about rejecting sort of traditional notions that are placed in on the Asian body, but again, he speaks about how they're only solely viewed as one thing and making me, then he goes and he reproduces the same thing even stylistically when he starts just going through cards without incorporating any other medium or alternative. Even when he's going to speak about how he read his narrative, but even his narrative was read in the same format as other arguments that his other arguments were made in.
See, the critique is not saying the myth of the model minority good. What are positive historical contexts Asian Americans can use?
Right, we can speak about.
Give me an example of like positive Asian historical context. You're like the Asian, or there's so many good stuff about Asian. What?
Right. Even alright. So when I was studying like Asian, well, I'm gonna speak specifically about Japan because that's what I remember. Like they were creating like all these cultural things that they created cultural clothing that was very unique to society. They have
so they can be ostracized by the West and say that they're for foreigners.
Right, you're still going back to relations we're talking about, right? You're allowing the West to categorize where you situated.
What positive example can Asian Americans use that aren't part of the myth of the model minority?
What do you mean?
Like portraying Japanese as cultural, hardworking, as intelligent, that they
right. The argument that we're making is that you're saying that we should allow like the other, I guess, in your sense, like the whiteness to determine like where we're situated in society. We're saying that we should need self-affirmation.
I just want a historical example of what.
I just gave you one, and then you said that's fit back into the more modern.
How does challenging Japanese aesthetic traditional clothing? How does that connect to our identity, and how
I didn't say challenge traditional clothing. I'm saying we should affirm that. We should affirm our own traditions, the positive things that we've created.
Wait, so we're Korean. How do we?
Right, I'm not specifically about Korean culture, but you're still supposed to affirm like every culture.
You don't know anything about Korean culture, and you're assuming there's good stuff and that things we can culturally connect to.
There's good stuff. You're telling me that your whole entire history is like everything that's ever been in Korean culture.
We're just saying that it's masked and that it's invisible because of the myth of the model.
Right, we're saying affirm. We're saying affirm that. Affirm the invisible. Right, they're not affirming the invisible. They didn't speak specifically about the positive concept.
A race that has been historically discriminated, and our common cards indicate that people can emphasize and people recognize that African Americans are discriminated against. Okay, let's talk about the.
Right, our point is the 1AC never affirmed any positive connotations of
a process of self-reflexivity and positivism. Why isn't conscientization do that?
We're speaking about a starting point of self-esteem. Hook speaks about like critical consciousness. Hook speaks about critical consciousness, right? She says the only way that we can ever access things like that, they're gonna make the argument that that's that. She's saying the only way we can ever access that by having self-esteem, which is a prerequisite to the
active
argument.
moment, especially in we're giving the political moment that has shifted right and hopes for student activists are drowning in a sea.
But the thing
Right, that doesn't
is,
address
you
the
already
concept
said
of
that the
self-esteem.
Asian body cannot have this form of self-reflection, but we're
Right.
actually saying is that once you have this form of
Also,
self-reflection, then you can have the critical
consciously
consciousness.
naming our world, knowing our relations, go through these positive relations. Why is that not
Right, in your own speech, you said you couldn't even access that just now, and the argument is that they're going to argue that critical conscientization is the same as that sort of self-conscious we're talking about. Hook says you cannot access that until you access the self-esteem that's necessary to be able to navigate those avenues.
Asians, Americans have?
Everybody has self-esteem. That's what I'm saying. That's the mental. Why does someone that says you don't have that? Affirm it. You have to affirm it. Like you have to affirm it every consistent point.
I want an example. What can we become self-esteem to?
Right, our argument was that the 1AC should have affirmed positive connotations of Asian culture.
Specific example.
I just modified
Okay, I'm gonna give you one step. Stop.
That's obviously cool.
30, right?
I'm from the frigid north. We used to get 4 inches of snow a day in the winter.
We don't have seasons where I'm from.
We don't really anymore. I live in Florida now, so.
Are we waiting on someone?
Are we?
No.
No, it's
I said stop already.
it's gonna be hers.
Did you jump it if there's anything to jump? Flash?
Wait, pass that question.
Is it just a K still?
I'm just making sure this piece of evidence is on there. It's just one piece of evidence.
Go for it.
San Francisco, like Sonoma or area.
You guys have so much travel to get that.
Yeah, sorry.
It's not really that great for us either, but at least there are a lot of tournaments on the East Coast.
There are a lot of tournaments on the East Coast.
Yeah, we don't get the jet lag. We only go out to California once.
And that's a way better direction to go, because the mornings aren't horrible. Just night.
And we're trying to do stinker down the
Yeah.
because of their ski week.
Oh, that's nice.
In fact, if they even get a ski week, I didn't have a ski week. I had ski week.
My son's elementary school has ski week, but we don't have ski week. Which just sounds like the most elite capitalist idea possible. I'll take a break and go skiing.
Is it?
New Black Poetry Intro.
Okay. It's not when you see people.
That was from the Minnesota team at camp.
So you said just the permutations?
It's just the alternative, New Black Poetry Intro. Okay, right?
I don't have a timer, so.
I'll start.
Oh, is everybody not ready? No?
Okay.
Okay, cool. The first poem talks about how they can only go through conscientization to only break down the modern minority, but the same thing is that if we go through these forms of critical consciousness, that's the only way that you can actually break down these forms of the myth of the modern minority, because the critical consciousness that Hooks talks about is the same form of the self-esteem and the self-realization that you can have this type of self-love to break down these types of modern minority differences. And the second poem, they talk about how that they're from their own position, that they have that outlook of the world, but the Aff needs to go through the process of the self-reflection as a starting point in order to deconstruct this myth. We cannot be able to solve unless there is a clear starting point, and that starts from with us. Okay. Poetry means nothing if it decorates the walls of power. Adrian Rich. The permutation means nothing in this debate round. Embracing our criticism means nothing in which we still decorate the walls of power. As Rich says, the only way we can create effective change is when we put our criticism at the center of the attention. We can't just be a sideline. Our movement is not something just to be added. We are not a side dish. We need to be the main course. When the Aff gets the vote and is going into higher round, they are in no way shaping what other people are actually trying to think about. They're not engaging in the same activity. In order to authentically engage in our methodology, it requires a profound rebirth. It involves in giving up the current modes of thought present in the 1AC and engaging that of our method, because the permutation remains tied to the same actions of the 1AC, which prevents authentic engagement in our movement, leading to a reflection of the same domination. A world where love was a mutual foundation, where we can focus on conscientization, the critical conscious need to have the self-esteem and self-reflection building up to that self-love. We can all understand that what love is, where there will be no need for argumentation such as perm. The perm is another link to the critique, is the Aff way of continuing to ignore the notions of love, to sweep under the rug while pretending like the problems don't happen within the status quo. The role of the ballot, that form of self-affirmation, of that self-love. Your job as the judge is to vote for the method that you find most preferable, approaching ways and more effective ways to create change. The perm is fault because the alt to the affirmative is the self-love, and the 1AC doesn't have that, meaning that they can't perm a rejection of the alternative. So the perm is stupid. Our alternative is the acceptive doing the plan. We take the intersectional approaches and the base space towards identifying blackness and love and challenging all other forms of oppression. And our alternative is the prerequisite to any type of other method. We create the better policies by making the base space more inclusive, allowing for all different perspectives to access the space. What's this? Is it just
it's only alternative poetry.
Okay. I see our poem, social and political, as scientific new music. These constructs are the solo concerts to the infinite tactic initiations of our elegance, as we are along to be black radiance. They are death crisis, the pin poor excellence in the recent capitalist stages of the world. Testimonies against the brutal psychological engravings of these base of so-private order and psychology and sham stands. These poems speak about immortal language of the symbolic and the mystic love. The black power hissing not only the cold blue nature of the pristine compassion, but their drama, the firm way that they educate. The new black poetry for very similar regions can be usually experienced clearly anytime by anyone. We do not have to know what the daily life of the ancient Egyptian was like in order to feel the art being produced. Real art, no matter how unique, is never difficult. Black poets here are practically and magically involved in a collective efforts to trigger real social change. Correction throughout the zones of this republic. We are mirrors here, and that anybody who has the ultimate faith in the self-esteem of the enemy. Such people are obstacles. Our weapons are culture. Our poems, like any concept of any art which influences the Afro-American nationalism, our poems exist primarily for and go directly in our central human needs, the people, our shaku, strong desires, our minds of the strategy, the drawing boards, the social revolutionary battleground, dragons breathing black fire, the experience of our eyes with the sounds of our spirits underneath. The above date brings up to the white concept of emancipation days, and the historical reference, which only is to us the superficial fact, the continuous time, the genius of our African spirit, which in a way and all the people principally come to ourselves as a symbol. Out of the orange and the growth of creative strong, the hieroglyphics of our enslaved bodies, bursting free, cracking open hot walls of time and space, have contemporary lessons of this poetry as current history, which has no other example of our precise and undefined culture and human existence, and insignias is the song that helps sustain our richness. Poetry, the poem in the top of the 1MC is basically our form of saying that this is our self-reflection. Once we have this type of poetry, we can actually come together and have these type of self-reflections, and we can actually move towards the self-esteem and self-love. The actual starting point starts from within ourselves, because love is that type of emotional thing. It comes from within the psyche, and you need to have it as a prerequisite before anything.
The permanent tradition.
And it's a counter-dominant.
Right.
Yeah.
in the bathroom.
Good point. Is there a reason everyone took so long this morning? Did like the shuttle breakdown?
The bus apparently drove in circles. I don't know what was happening.
They were lost.
It was horrible.
I can't imagine.
We were on the bus, and we were like the second to last stop to get picked up. So other people were on the bus for like an hour longer than us. And the bus was like an hour late picking us up.
Did you flow the negative blocks?
Yes.
Alright. Yep. So ACE and then the order of the negative block is overview,
Alright.
decay, then the permutation. Anybody not ready? Alright. You cannot win a counter methodology while dropping the case. There's multiple tangential impacts like zero-stage drop. Firstly, interrogation history. We bring out the invisible prices of the Korean slave and the Mexican hacienda, which is the uniqueness slave for their firmly because of and the realization and the reason why right now the uniqueness is that there is self-love between ancients. So they need to recognize the dark history that they have, or else they'll never break down the modern myth. Now there are a couple of implications for the modern mind. One is that Asian people do not get educational opportunities in college program because people think that all Asians are smart and that all Asians are hardworking, so they don't get other benefits of firming actually when some of them actually help. The second argument is based off of welfare. Because Asians are lumped into one category. The ones in poverty are overshadowed by the couple of rich ones in this status quo. Breaking down the modern myth is key to making that. Now the third argument is binary resentment. This is an argument that they have dropped in terms of time and counter methodology because the resentment that they say that we just saw, they need self-love for all the things that their host talks about, all the lack of slavery and the focus on black children, all of that is created by the model minority because the black people just think that Asians are the hard-working ones and also that Asians are working hard. The conservative right points to the Asians and tells the other minorities, look, you can do it because they are working hard. This is all of your suffering is landed yours. This is the reason why they breaking down the myths of the minorities, the prerequisites of solving for the self-love. Now his overview, there are no links to the criticism. He says that we only talk about the middle, except there are uniqueness claims right now. The framing issue for this criticism is that either the permutation solves, or else there's no link in the permutation solve, or else we control uniqueness and the entirety of the one sees impact on this because all these links are based off us. All these links, like the narration link, is not true because we're not only talking about debate and negative conjugation. This is the game of the minds. I get personal experience. You don't know the positive things that we have happened. Instead of just focusing on the positive thing, we see that there's a negative thing that we need to be brought out. There is no slavery link either because this is hitting in the status quo. Only that uniqueness and the reason why we need to bring it out right now. And also there is no hoax links because also there's nothing about media portrayal because the mindful evidence get right into wasting link turns it, saying that Koreans only see positive portrayals in the media of white people, which is the reason why they try to be westernized, but that only feeds into myth of mind because the West will never accept it. That is another impact to description. Now he says that Asians did good things in the past. The cross-examination was Damon's question because you need to prove a point to one good thing that Asians done. The good things that Asians done to feed the myth of the minority because the right conservatives think that Asians can be able to get out of all their problems so they don't give them any help when some actually do. Now he says that we make people realize slavery and that's the only way. No, it's not. There's a uniqueness claim right now. People do not realize the slavery that even Koreans have gone through, which is a uniqueness claim and the reason why we need to bring it out. The K-power, he says that conscientization is bad, except conscientization, no cards in the concept of Asians. All the ones who hook services about black culture poverty, which is a good no-link argument to the permutation because different people can have different strategies. Asians should go through conscientization while blacks should go through self-love. The reason why those strategies are not mutually exclusive or at the best why the permutation is solid. Now he says that we have to create positive images in the world. We have to create positive images in the world. If this is a role of balance, the Osajima evidence explicitly captures this because it says that conscientization is being able to name the world. It's a constant clarification of what remains hidden about us. And this recognition inspires people to work against oppression and begin their active efforts to understand the world. We have to understand the positive and the negative for conscientization to work properly, which is the reason why the permutation is solved. He says the ballot argument is a link. No, it is not. You also covered acceptance for the role of ballot. Also, the acceptance is good because it's the only way to bring down the mind in their midst. The post-cutting reason the black is about the black culture probably not about the making. He says that we need to honor our true history and being a spiritual revolution. That's what conscientization does. Conscientization involves all these things like history, personal narratives, and now he says that we cause the black-white binary. No, we do not. We are the ones breaking down the black-white binary because the black-white binary is propped up by the middle body of the Asian Americans, which is the reason why I still often right. They have dropped all the nativistic racism arguments coming out of the 2AC because there's a new type of racism and just actual differential racism that tries to exclude people based on culture. Only by breaking down the model binary can we debate that. He says that we debate traditionally just because we read cards does not mean that we debate traditionally. Just because we read fashions does not mean we debate traditionally. Our narrative is a reason, and our narrative is a reason why we're breaking this down. And also our cards are by organic intellectuals, Koreans who have suffered the same immigration there's a reason why there's no like not a permutation. The permutation solves 100% because it's not a even if it's a debate of competing methodologies. Our methodologies are essentially the same. It's just for different people, which is what conscientization and self-love is. She says that's a prerequisite. No, it's not. Self-love is not a prerequisite conscientization because self-love is going on right now. The only way we could actually have self-love, and also for black people to have self-love, is to break down the myth of the minority. He said that as a prerequisite. Now he says that I used to go question about starting points. Our starting point is conscientization. Not only the suffering of the myth of the minority, but conscientization is our starting point. The reason why it's not mutually exclusive. She says that the permeates that we ignore love. No, it does not. The conscientization can't be done for love either. All the poetry arguments and all solvency arguments do not make sense if the poetry does not focus on Asians. They don't have a single card about Asian Americans, while we have ones that relate the suffering of Asians to the suffering of other minorities. The intersectionality arguments support the permutation, because if you need an intersection approach, the permutation is obviously the best methodology, because the permutation involves every single review. Anything else? The alternative is not a prerequisite because alternative doesn't break down the myth of minority. There's a fundamental uniqueness claim that Asians cannot do self-love because that's what they are perceived right now. That needs to be broken down within the Asian American community, and the reason why Gabriel and my performance is good.
What's your name? Congratulations, Ryan.
Layla McClay. Nice to meet you too. Reading about your last couple weeks have been pretty exciting.
All interesting things always in debate.
Congrats on this all.
Thank you.
That was fun to read about. Not fun, but like
Yeah.
ironically fun.
Got something from Michigan that week.
Huh?
Michigan AP knocked us out in quarters. So that's something for the week. Special debate.
Cool.
As Michigan State smart, anything to do that with Michigan, I'm happy to. I'm back from that day at Michigan. I guess they're just starting to get good. It's right when they restarted their program.
Yeah, they got two good teams.
What was the second one?
Kevin Aff, his partner. Yeah.
I guess I don't even know his partner this year. It was Dutch last year.
They got a new one. I forgot his name. He told me before around. But we debated the Michigan B and octaves. We lost to Michigan A.
And the Kentucky people talk to you at all?
We still haven't said anything.
Miss Reed, supposed to be here this weekend.
I saw that on the, we were doing our preps and I was like, well, this is going to be interesting.
No, I put you all the same, just to hope.
For the panel?
I'm
Just praying. I'm like, oh, that would be so hilarious. I don't even care if we win.
We're gonna have a conversation. It's okay.
You're going to start that conversation?
Hello, how you doing? That's all. And you made it very clear then where I was and was not supposed to be. So there's no conversation other than that.
Yeah, they usually don't invite back defending champions.
It's a new trend. I understand.
It's a new tradition this year.
Yes, I get it.
That and Oklahoma doctor. I mean, the fact that against Oklahoma is a little bit trickier because they have two teams that deserve to go. And it kind of breaks the round robin when they do that. You can't invite both unless you change the whole format. You should. Invite 12 teams and split the Oklahoma teams out. Does Oklahoma Northwestern have a second team that's really good?
Yeah.
Probably. Harvard has a second team that's good enough, so they could have probably made it work.
Harvard's the A division, and the B. Forget, I think it's like A and.
Oh, okay, McCarty.
Yeah. I think it's a B team. If you're around, feel free to do what you wish.
I think you made your point. In a way that.
Was that your ad? Your ad was that Kentucky.
Well, there was we read the Daily Standard article from last year that said that the findings of the NDT was a destruction of faith, and we should embrace that. People were just like, a lot of people apparently didn't know about it.
But they
I
already
know
know
about
it.
it. It's all over my Facebook when that came out. All my old.
I read it even before it was on Facebook, or before I checked Facebook and saw it posted 100 times.
It's funny. All the old.
I thought you'd have saved that one a little bit longer.
Cal State hasn't been in debate forever. We're like, what's going on?
Sam's response, his speech doc, just said LOL at the bottom.
Who's?
Sam, the coach at Emporium. It's like our response, I think will sum up all of our feelings. If you need any further clarification, we will not give it to you. Put it on Facebook, said you feel free to give this to anyone you want. It was at the bottom of like 2 pages, it just said LOL.
That's great.
I would respond if it wasn't an anonymous
Yeah.
article trolling and call me stupid.
It's the anonymous trolls are the hardest ones to deal with. It's like they're either serious or they're just trolling. And it's really impossible to tell which one it is. It's just like anything on Facebook these days. Or I guess see the forums where you can post as anonymous.
That is always bad.
Anything you can post as anonymous is no good. Just like when Gabe was trying to do the like judge diversity thing. And the anonymous troll just kept going up.
I've got given up on like the internet.
I was really close last week. Everything I read just made me angry. And angrier and angrier. And then I just realized like all the people are dumb.
Yeah,
I don't talk to them.
direction. I don't get Facebook fights anymore.
Yeah.
Get
I started writing and then deleted many things. I was like,
I
this is
saw
not
that you're
worth it.
surprisingly absent from the Facebook posts about you.
I gave some dude was going off like the NDT teacher traditions page. I gave him like a couple paragraphs and I was like, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
That seems to be where the craziest people are. All these acts that
It is somewhat entertaining to read some days. I'll give it that.
It's like the politics. It's worse than politics updates. I have to keep up with who's this person? I don't know you.
Yeah, it's also so many people that are so much older that you would never know, and it's like the age group in the middle. They're like, oh yeah, I remember them being older than me, and then you can go down to see the younger people.
Yeah.
The young people don't really know all the older. Old people don't know the young for the most part. So it's just angry people.
Everybody's angry.
Yeah, me too.
This debate comes down to a question of negative value and rejection of negative connotations of Korean culture that place Koreans at a subservient lens of analysis. The Hook 7 is Hook's talking about how we need to understand our historicity as people as a whole, meaning that we need to understand the positive agencies being asserted on these bodies. And when affirmers start discussion, negative pessimistic glance of what has happened, and when they look back at the advocacy argument, when they're speaking about the relationship with Mexico, speaking about it as slaves and how we should reject sort of hard-working mentality, that sure we can reject the hard-working mentality, that does not mean we should affirm negative connotations of what it means to be a slave in constant Mexico. Rather, we should affirm the positive agencies in place of Korean culture. The fact that we have a lack of understanding that probably means the one thing not inherent is educational activity where young people are internalizing what these teams have to offer. It is devastating because if we're in a debate space, we're all interacting with each other on a daily basis and we're all breathing in new life, new argumentation. That is why I've come to understand the water place of Korean culture. If I can't identify the positive agency, but I can speak simply about how they are just slaves and have done things like that. They're not hardworking people. That is problematic. That's when you start to internalize, bring back to our communities. That is the spiritual murder that we're talking about. It's devastating to argue that we should look at just the slavery in Mexico. That becomes problematic. They're trying to shift away from sort of advocacy, but not bringing up later in the debate. They're going specifically on conscientization, forgetting what they're actually talking about, their own evidence talking about slavery and identifying that as what caused argumentation starting point for their epistemology. And this is it's the same thing that causes spirit murder. Hosts talking about the only thing that self-esteem can resolve spirit murder against me large impacts from. They've done no impact how this we're going to do it here. Speaks about how we transcend sort of realities. This is a transgenerational attitude that we're talking about. We can extend the whole 7. Is this the Willie Lynch study where Willie's talking about taking the mind, leaving the body? This is what he's doing. They're trying to take the mind and leave the body. They're trying to change the epistemological lens while they leave the body situated in the status quo, never interrogating the sort of relationship we have with the oppressor on a daily basis, which means that we are there's actually transgenerational slavery, which was problematic. So if they're slaves now, it's still going to be slaves later on because when they see does not resolve this sort of questioning, meaning that's going to lead to the impact calculus. That was the other piece of Hook 7 is talking about the wars, crimes, violence, emotional, psychological suffering won't resolve until we do this. They're saying that our emotional, psychological suffering can be addressed until we address the underlying neglect that is situated that the one is still neglect, saying that they don't have access to, and they're going to go for the consigns. Why is the same thing that makes you believe that you have no self-esteem to resolve the problem? Because during slavery, whiteness was the ones, the white masters was the one that said you are not allowed to affirm positive agency because you are nothing but subservient to us. You will never be as great as whites can be, and they follow the same line by trying to reject any positive agency that can be observed on. You can reject one minority, but try to affirm something that's based affirm your own. You need to have your own self-affirmations. It's okay to not allow people to turn and define where you're situated, but it's also problematic when you don't define where you're situated. That's why we're going to extend the ego trip by geopolitics because that allows us to define where we're situated in the conscious society and where the positive agency to re-articulate is black individual in space. Well, they're going to go for conscientization starting point, but it's not. Conscientization is a method. They speak about it uniquely as a process about how they interact. Their starting point was how the 1AC started discussion for Asian Korean bodies. In this space, the only alternative we can go over is the affirmation of self-esteem and self-examine how to reject the ideologies of culture. They're going to say we dropped the native stuff, but we didn't. Even this new form of oppression, they say represents marginalization and oppression that we've rather black and something facing consistently. In fact, the fact that we don't know any positive thing about it is not a reason both that one means 1AC is not inherent because because we as individuals in faith don't get access to sort of stereotypes that have been placing them as positive individuals and tools uniquely keep their positive connotation. Our methods are not the same. The only thing they are going left and trying to argue is the permutation, but one winning the prerequisite part of the debate because Hook says in order to access critical consciousness, they're actually talking about we have self-esteem first, and that is the only way we can do. Get to the real question of what he's trying to get to, and they're trying to do in the opposite direction. They're saying use the conscientization to be able to access sort of love argument. That is backwards, doesn't function that way. And two, poetry stuff, grants this unique song. See, because Claire Baker was talking about how the only way for access to love, so when he doesn't access, they don't engage sort of poetry. He said it's better the starting point of epistemology, and the perm can change how the debate actually started. Starting with epistemology unique how to want to see represent the first part of their speech. The permutation cannot resolve that. Permutation cannot change the past. Between the past, what happened at the beginning of this debate. Anderson and Warner announced about how it's necessary for us to not decorate the walls of power with representations of new form. They decorate the walls of power by again representing the same forms of whiteness. Once you represent whiteness, saying we only want you to assert negative connotations because it'll only be subservient to us, and we must reject every mode of thought and breathe in new forms of thought. That's what Schmidt was really getting out of this speech because we're the only ones who have these all sort of approaches that we breathe into new form of life. That's a true critical consciousness is happening in this space because we particularly have love in itself, so it's uniquely allows us to access form of self-esteem, which is key to restoring our spirits. It's a spiritual revolution. You call for these in a spiritual revolution, something that they have not answered throughout the entire space. When you talk about dropped evidences, two, supersedes any impact capitalism can have, even if they're so, even if they're winning some form of vague movement that we represent. Permutation can never function. That's our traditional approach to debate because of our current traditional poetry solves.
This is a nice thing.
It's a nice room.
Yeah.
It's sort of small for a college classroom.
Well, I'm guessing it's
Well, I think Diggs isn't that a smaller school?
yeah, smaller university.
Makes a little bit more sense. Where did you go?
Cal.
Okay, Cal's good. I went to Michigan State, which is
You
top
went to
10.
university of
Yeah.
Michigan State's top 10 in the country for size all of our survey.
My freshman year chemistry class had 800 students.
Oh.
And that was one section. The
That's
second
deep.
section was the same hall with 800 students, but they had to watch it on video. There's 1,600 kids. in
That's a
the
watch
class.
lecture on video.
Yeah.
They watched
On
the first
chemistry.
class.
Yeah, they watched our live chemistry class or on video.
It's a big school.
Pardon?
I said it's a big school.
It's big school.
Where in the city is ACORN?
Brooklyn. I don't know if you know where like the next stadium is. No? Nah, well, it's in Brooklyn. Yeah. It's area.
How far is that from here?
Maybe like not that far actually. But yeah, like half
Half hour driving?
No, train.
Okay, yeah, that's, yeah, I was gonna say half hour can mean a lot of different things.
Nah, yeah. That's a good time for her. Because when we go to Bronx tomorrow, it's probably gonna take me like it's probably gonna take me like over an hour, maybe an hour.
Yeah, last year we commuted from Battery Park because one of our kids had an apartment there. That was the worst. Took us 90 minutes.
You went from Battery Park to the Bronx. I live deep. I live by the water. You know Coney Island?
Yeah.
All the way down.
Wow.
I get a good summer breeze though. That's the best part.
That commute was not fun, so sounds like yours is worse than that.
I mean, I only have to take 2 trains though. I don't know how you got there, but I just take the Q.
Subway. I think we got on one subway that went all the way there.
This dude accused me of robbing the store yesterday. I was like, I went out like, it was like 11 o'clock in the night. And then I went to go get like snacks. Cause I was prepping. And then I went to one store and bought plantain chips. I went to another store. And then he was like, and I was trying to buy stuff. So I like had money and I gave him the money for the stuff I was buying from that store. And then he was just like, what about what's in that black bag? I was like, yeah, what about it? He's like, you didn't get the money. I was like, no, I got them in the store across the street. And he just like started pressing me. And he really like took my stuff and he just like walked over the counter. Cause he was about to go and check it with the stock. I was just like, no, it's okay. You can give me back my stuff and give me back my money. And I was coming back. That was crazy. That was my experience this morning. Yeah, that's crazy though, because I go to that store like all the time.
At night?
Who's coaching now?
Jen Johnson.
There's more debating you next, and the panel is Natalia and Dorman and Kiko.
He's not allowed to do this.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah. I put him as a conflict for the tournament. I guess the conflicts I put for that don't go ahead.
Somebody's gonna figure that out.
People actually did the conflicts.
Oh yeah, I'll make sure I do, man. Cause it's gonna be extra work if you get somebody that you're not supposed to, you have to go run to tab and
Oh,
talk
you're
to
gonna
them.
get a way worse judge too. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But it's just like, for us, we don't know anyone's conflicts, you know. Because we don't debate around here very
Well, I just
often.
looked up
We
the
moved
judging
to
philosophy and
Bronx.
it said ACORN. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, yes, saying.
Jordan is the only one that I did know that he was with ACORN. That's the only one that. Otherwise, we'll have no idea. It's a home court advantage.
Who's acting? Who's not?
We have a weird panel.
Yeah, you do.
We're Aff, y'all are Neg.
Okay.
Still have a fun stretch.
Split.
Oh, like 3 minutes left.
Basically, get all that here.
There's what, 3 rounds, 4 rounds?
There's 3 rounds and the top 2
And then
teams
the-
from each pod. Each.
So basically, we're gonna be eating at like 11 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that it says. Oh, I see.
I have school tomorrow.
I had school that day.
Oh, where you go to school?
Rutgers.
Oh, so okay. Yeah, I knew that. I don't know why I asked that. I definitely knew that.
It's cool. I'm glad I don't go to New Brunswick. New Brunswick. So a lot of people, like, you get lost in New Brunswick. There's just like too much to do. There's like parties. There's like not just clubs, but like stuff off campus. And people get like, you go and you don't concentrate on school. You don't concentrate on anything. And I feel like if I had done like 2 plus 2, there's 2. You can do 2 on another campus and then 2 on the New Brunswick campus. But I could have handled that. But I'm kind of glad I didn't do that either.
Yeah. How do you like debating there?
It was good. I debated there first, and I went to 4 years just for a semester, and I went back. Debating with my old partner. It's okay. We're just, our styles have just like changed because he kept debating. He debated with somebody else, and I debated and like got like the Emporia style stuff, and we're trying to like find the middle ground again. It's, I don't know, it's coming up with some interesting stuff though, some thoughts.
I'd love for you to talk to Ricky at some point. He's one of my debaters, and he's coming out fine too. It would be good for me to get some insight.
Why do some of the judges have stars though?
I have no idea.
I think it's just a chair.
Because
Because I'm
us,
special. I'm more special than you.
could be.
I'm older. Maybe that's why.
Oh, yeah, Shane takes it from you. I guess I don't know Jared Cayman. Is he older than me? Daniel's older than Elijah. Malia's older than Jordan. That makes sense, at least.
We had a judge 3 times last year.
On the same side? Oh, well, I guess it was 3 times.
Yeah, all 3 on the same side, too.
Is everyone ready?
Yeah, I'm not ready. What did you say?
Case
Case
study.
study.
Thank you. That was such a long prep time that I lost track of what happened.
There was a debate going on?
Yeah.
Good thing I floated on paper and then we closed the
Maybe we should do 8 minutes next.
Yeah.
You will sign Aff because they have dropped the case that outweighs the unarticulated impacts of the critique. We are able to solve for the myth of the minority, and the K cannot resolve for that. First, the impact of myth of the minority. First, allows the impression of Asian Americans to continue, such as example of education, where Asians are already smart enough now, so they don't need any help. Wherefore, where the poverty is not showed up, because they are assumed to be economically, socially well, that allows the considered economic impact. It allows the oppression of other minorities to continue, because the right wing points at the Asian Americans and say, look at those Asians, look at how hard they're working. You can do better, and you can join the system too if you work harder, just like the Asian American. When in reality, it's not true. The third impact, which turns the critique of love, is the resentment. It causes resentment between African American and the Korean. Historical example is the LA riot, where Koreans were seen as human shields and a scapegoat for African Americans, and it causes resentment. That means that the Black Americans cannot love the Korean American because they are always seen as forever foreigners, and they are always between the dominant and the subordinate, and they do not fit in their racial hierarchy. That just causes a massive oppression that pits the other minorities and groups, which means that critique cannot solve for the impacts they articulated unless they solve for the myth of the minority. Now, go on to the critique. First, I'm going to start with the permutation, because this is going with us. The F solves for Asian oppression, the next solves for love. There is no dissent to the case, which means that the permutation is what you're going to default for. First argument is, this is the line for the hoax card. We need literacy, a mass-based movement for literacy linked to education for critical consciousness. What is important, we need to start where we are. What Osajima says that Asians should develop a critical conscience, so the alternative is the burden. Just call for the cards and read that, naming who we are and developing this critical conscience to become politically active and start changing the world. So the second impact is that hooks can see that we have to start from where we are. The Asian body is right now located in the myth of the minority, which means that this is still the F. There's only uniqueness for our impacts in these stats codes, so only we can engage. Now, second is all their cards about black culture. There are two impacts for this too. One, the fact that Tyler cannot name an example of positive thinking for Asians means that Asians need to use the negative. Example, of Japanese class is just a part of the myth of the minority, because we are celebrating the Asians as being creative, artistic, and beautiful. This means that the assumed known as Asians are happy, when in reality that they are just as much oppressed. Now, the second impact is that this proves that blacks should use the positive and Asians should use the negative. You have to continue that Asians try to be white in these stats code, that they look at the positive image of the model of minority and accept it. That the only other thing we see as positive is the white community, and we try to become white. That positive is what fosters the model minority myth and turns all your impact. Now going to now this two methods to the permutation. Method one is going to be the myth of the minority. With articulate on the case, the case does not solve for the myth of the minority. It does not even challenge it. If the Asians go through positive, they just say, yes, my culture is hardworking. That is the positive we default to, and that perpetuates the oppression of the myth of the minority. Second, the method you can see is native vector racism. Affirming positive leads to the forever foreigner concept, where immigrants say that we are never white, no matter how hard we scrub, we will never become white. That's the only positive we see is the white community, which only perpetuates that native vector racism, that we are just the same strain of yellow peril that keeps on coming to this country now. First on, let's go on to line by line. They say hooks said we have to study our history. Our history is dotted with the myth of the minority, and our history is invisible because of the myth of the minority and native vector racism. We are exposing that real and invisible history, which and that means what I see is an entire 8-minute impact to this argument. They say that the slave is negative and we should use the positive. Rather, you still don't have an example of how Asian American culture is positive. The only cultural positive cultural thing I can think of is the myth of the minority, that we are hardworking and that we are intelligent. That is a myth which the firm says is false, and that thesis of that argument is false. They say that slavery in Mexico is like slavery in Mexico is the invisible history that the positivism does not resolve. If we're just all about positive, we just allow the invisibility and unassumed norm of the myth of the minority to continue. You just become silent to that oppression. Now they say that we never get interrogative relation of power, and that self-esteem key. Self-esteem does not solve for the myth of the minority. They can see that the negative tools can solve us. That even through a negative process, we can still go through a critical consciousness and learn who we are. We can still, that way is the reason why the affirmative is still able to solve for negative, because we are going through and naming for our the performance of the 1AC is able to solve, because we go through a critical consciousness and self-reflecting thought about how did the community and how our careers as a beings gone. They say whiteness equals no self-esteem. That's exactly what the unique argument. Asian cannot engage in their self-esteem. They are already positive in the stats code. We have to break down that positive because it has not worked and it just led to the oppression of more Asian. They say that Asian nativists, they say conscientization conscientization is a method for affirmation and self-esteem. That is exactly why the permutation is able to function. It functions on different levels because none of the cards are specific to Asian Americans. Only we read the cards on how the going through a process of conscientization is able to solve for them reflection solve. They say they are frequently noticed that was all the assumptions that they are not counting the assumptions of pre-model minority and does not solve for the case. That's all the that's what they say poetry is unique. That's unique for black debaters, not Asian Americans with critical conscience and breaking down that negativity. They say speaking out that we are tradition, that we are not speaking out. Yes, we are breaking down the myth of the minority and taking yes, even if it's negative, it is a good negative step because it solves for the myth of the minority.
Debate.